lot of wise guys anyway. I don't know if we're wise men. The idea came from Dell and I talking, just appreciating the music at Christmas time. We had last Sunday morning with all the children and students singing. We had Christmas Eve. Diana was part of that, the great instrumental music we heard. So we just thought, let's keep that going. So guys, thanks for responding. Lisa was talking about Christmas gifts, and of the many gifts I received, this one you can't read it from out there, but it's one of my favorites for sure. I'm going to share it with you. It's called Ole and Lena Fortune Cookies. People will go to great lengths to try to improve the humor around here. So it says the serving size is 1 cookie, and there's 12 servings per container, so that means you've got 12 weeks to enjoy one of these per week. You've heard of the 12 days of Christmas? You're having the 12 weeks of Ole and Lena. So never know what you're going to get. We'll find out. Did I say it was from Mark and Kathy? I don't remember if I did. Ole chuckled as he read through the obituaries. You know, Lena, it seems like everyone dies in alphabetical order. It's only downhill from there. Well, it's been a full week. And I think Lloyd is right. I'm going to try to take you up on that wisdom of we need to just stop and sit and reflect and be thankful. Hard to do, though, isn't it? When there's so much happening. Doesn't seem like only a week ago the church was filled with cowboys and angels and dogs acting as sheep. You know, Don, are you here this morning, Don and Donna? No, they might be on the road already, but they did a good job of having their dogs here, having them in the sheep costume. And Don started working on another project with their dogs already. I don't know if he told you or not, but he's teaching them to play cards. And I said, Don, how's that going? He said, oh, they're not very good. Every time they get a good hand, they wag their tail. So it kind of gives away the point of having the good card. So, and then I'd also, along with this gift, I'd like to thank the Nicholsons, even beyond the fortune cookies, because they provided me with all the cowboy gear that I got to wear last week. I actually had made an outfit, and I had made a hat out of brown wrapping paper, and I made a vest out of waxed paper, and then I made some chaps out of that gift tissue, but Mark saw that, and he was afraid I'd get arrested for rustling, so he had Caleb bring me some other gear. Do have one actual story, though. I'm not sure if you realize this, because I never really advertised it, but about a little over a year ago, there was an Arab prince that was traveling through speaking at the schools. Jen probably would remember that. And he fell really seriously ill during his time here, and he needed a blood transfusion, and I have the universal type that I can give to anybody, so I was his donor, and he was so grateful that last Christmas he sent me a sack of diamonds in the mail, and it was such an awesome thing to get that gift. So this Christmas, when a gift arrived from the prince again, I was really excited. I opened it on Christmas Day, and it was a can of sauerkraut, because now he's got German blood in his veins from me. Gospel of Matthew this morning, where we're going to look, is detailed, very specific in laying out Jesus' genealogy and Joseph's place in it. And then he's just as specific in chronicling the visit of the Magi, which we sang about here a few minutes ago, and the after effects on Jesus and his family and us today. So we're going to look to Matthew chapter 2, verses 13 through 23. Matthew 2, verses 13 through 23. There's a Bible in the rack in front of you if you don't have one yourself, or you can simply listen. Matthew chapter 2. Starting in verse 13, Matthew writes of the Magi, and he writes, when they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Get up, he said, take the child and his mother, and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I called my son." When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. "A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted because they are no more." After Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who were trying to take the child's life are dead." So he got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning in Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. Having been warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee, and he went and lived in a town called Nazareth. So was fulfilled what was said through the prophets, "He will be called a Nazarene." When I read this passage, I think of the days after Christmas. There's sort of, I don't know if you feel it, but there's sort of like a natural letdown in the days after Christmas, after all the hype and the preparation and the company and everything that you have going on, even things at church. There's sort of a natural building towards Christmas Eve, and then we just sort of take a deep breath. It's an easy time, it seems like, for people to get sick. They get colds, they get flu, ate too many rich foods during Christmas, and they get stomach ailments and all these things. And I picture Joseph and Mary in this time, and they're thinking, "Oh, we've had a long journey, we've had a baby, we've had visits from cowboys and angels and dogs, and they're dressed like sheep, and now the Magi showed up, and now finally everybody's gone," and they're thinking, now maybe we can get some rest. We can do like Lloyd said. We can sit and just think about all that has happened and what God is doing. We can maybe establish a normal routine as a family. And just as soon as they think it, that very night, Joseph is sleeping and he has another angel dream. And he's told, "Get up, take Jesus and Mary to Egypt." Herod's jealous. He's paranoid, he's crazy, he's making irrational decisions, and he's going to try to kill Jesus. So up and off they go to Egypt. And that's the first of 3 scenes in this passage. Each of these scenes connects to an Old Testament passage, and I want you to see that this morning. And then after each connection is shown, Matthew tells us it has fulfilled the Old Testament prophecy. In a sense, it's filled it again. It's like a second fulfillment, this time in Jesus. So if you have a Bible, if you sort of look back through that passage, see if you can find the word fulfilled, because Matthew uses it 3 times in this passage. It should be there 3 times in verses 13 through 23. It's 3 Jesus scenes compared to 3 Old Testament scenes. That's what Matthew's doing. So that first fulfillment scene is the getting up and going to Egypt. Get up, get out of here, go to Egypt, make sure the baby's safe. And that connects to Hosea 11:1. These are the words from Hosea, the prophet, which say, "When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son." Very same words as verse 15 in our passage. Matthew's reminding us of Israel's exodus out of Egypt, how they got out of there after generations of slavery. And so by Jesus spending time in Egypt, he too would make an exodus. God could say, "I called him out of Egypt." And just like people were brought out of Egypt to experience freedom, so Jesus brings us and all of humankind who will listen, as Lisa said, brings us out of the slavery of sin into freedom of life in Christ, a life that is an everlasting kind of life, which we experience now and someday with Him. The second scene is a second fulfillment, and that's in verses 16 to 18. Now, Herod is just a deeply insecure guy. I don't think I really would have wanted to meet Herod in person, but I'd be interested to pick his brain and analyze and see what was all going on with him. He's so upset about Jesus being born, this baby that's born to be a king, and then he gets really, really mad that he got tricked by the Magi. They said, oh yeah, we'll come back and tell you exactly where Jesus is, but they didn't. They didn't come back. They went home by a different route. And you could maybe relate to this if you picture a time in life when you just overreact to something. You know, you've had it about up to here, and finally somebody picks that last straw, and you just blow up over something maybe that isn't that big a deal. You can't explain it, but it just sets you off. Now, if you think of that time and how foolish that kind of feels, take that times 1,000, and then you have something close to what Herod was like. He is so crazy, angry. You're not going to outwit me. I'm not going to lose my throne. So he blows up, has the authority to give a ridiculous order to go ahead and just kill everybody in Bethlehem and around who's 2 years old or younger, which would have been about the time that Jesus would have been born. So he just goes off his rocker and orders all these young boys killed, 2 and under male children. If you think about that order and then you think back to Old Testament, you can see the connection Matthew makes. He connects it to the orders of Pharaoh in Exodus 1:22, which says, every Hebrew boy that is born you must throw into the Nile, but let every girl live. In that scene, if you remember the story, Moses was spared, and now Jesus is rescued. So we have the old prophecy and then Jesus in the newer version. And then there's a third scene in this passage, a third fulfillment. It's in verses 19 through 23. Joseph is given the okay to go ahead and take his family back to Israel after Herod dies. In verse 20, you might notice the angel using the same wording as in verse 13 to bring that journey full circle. In 13, he said, get up. Take the child and his mother, escape to Egypt. And in verse 20, he says, get up, take the child and his mother and go back to the land of Israel. Because Herod, those who were trying to take the child's life, are now dead, no longer in power. The connection here to the Old Testament is to Exodus 4:19. You might remember Moses being told, okay, it's okay now to get out of Midian, go back into Egypt. And the words there are, for all those who wanted to kill you are dead. So we have 3 scenes this morning, 3 fulfillments that were fulfillments in Jesus' life that were also fulfillments in the days of the Old Testament, and which maybe also provide a sense of fulfillment in our own lives this morning. So what about us? Where's the connection between these stories, the story told in Matthew, related to the stories in the Old Testament, related to our story today? Because we're about to exit 2019, and we're about to enter new territory, the year 2020. I remember being a child and picturing 2020, probably because of the way you can say it, right? And also, I just remember thinking as a child, man, 2020, you will be really old. I'll be 53 years old in 2020. It seems so far away, but it's here. It came fast. Are there 3 or more scenes that you can think of playing out in your life today? As 2019 ends, as 2020 begins, maybe something unexpected like Brenda shared. Expecting to be in Houston, but you end up, oh, I got to have surgery, so I'm sticking around here. Things that you maybe saw coming or maybe you didn't. Maybe things that were a success in 2019 or a failure. Maybe things that you're struggling with yourself or people around you are having a tough time with, but it impacts you too. Maybe things that went way better than you ever would have expected. Maybe fear of losing the familiar. Maybe faith that's required that you're just going to have to forge ahead, though the road's not going to be easy. You can tell it isn't. Sometimes we know that in life. Not everything comes easy for us. Hopes and dreams for 2020 as you think about it, just around the corner. Things that you'll work toward. We're going to end the service in a few minutes differently this morning. In just a little bit, I'm going to invite you to share some of those things that are on your hearts and minds. And we're going to close by praying for each other and for this church in 2020. You know, sometimes verbalizing can make things real. And I know it's daunting to sometimes share out loud in public, but sometimes by doing that, it can push those thoughts and ideas forward, and I think God uses that in our lives. And just by saying it sometimes takes away the fear of it actually happening or doing it. So here's a couple things that you can think about. I'm going to share here a couple of things that are on my heart, but here's what you can use to reflect on. Think of an event this past year or a moment when you problem solved, and through prayer and through problem solving, you overcame a difficulty. So that might be something you share. Or reflect on either a joy or a sorrow that it was something that was great to go through or not so easy, but you understand yourself a little better because of it. You know, that wasn't so easy, but I kind of get a sense of who I am in God. You think Joseph and Mary maybe understood themselves a little better through the process of Christ's birth? I think they probably did, of who God was in their lives. And it's the same for us today. So reflect a little bit. Because like our passage, there's a history, maybe even some prophecy going on in our own lives. That's worth thinking about. Exodus 20:19. So one of the things I'm thinking about is my family. Our family is shifting. We had all of our kids home, but Eli and Lauren left yesterday. 2-day drive back to San Diego. And it starts a time 2020 does when they'll be less accessible to us, where we've been pretty blessed over these past months that they've been able to be home a lot. We've been able to be around them, but that's going to change as they both get fully engaged in their careers now and what God has in store for them. Michael flew to Texas yesterday to spend some time with her boyfriend's family, so she's getting to an age where things are changing quickly for her. Jack will graduate from TBHS in May. My wife entered into full-time marriage and family therapy practice not too many months ago, so that makes 2020 look different. So all of that is going on personally. On a church level, it's hard for me to imagine feeling more full, I think, as 2019 closes. Having more to anticipate also as 2020 opens, because I think about 2019, even just the summer. I think about the events we had, sitting right outside these doors, having hot dogs and fun on the go and dancing and having a movie in here and those things we did this summer that were really fun to be a part of. I think about the Sunday morning classes and hearing voices up in this area, but also the young voices, and knowing that the church was alive and full of people learning and growing and sharing. That's pretty cool to think about. And then I really, and I've said this before, but I love thinking about the active nature of our worship, and children are a big part of that. Our church embraces that. I love seeing them up here. I love that so many adults are willing to share God and life experience with our students. I love that children have a place in our worship. They can light candles, they can help with announcements, they can just be a part of things and not feel like it's someplace where they don't belong, but rather feel like they're a big part of it. So I think about those things. And then I think about 2020 opening. And even starting next week, we'll begin talking about membership and baptism opportunities and exciting things that will happen in 2020 that sitting here today, I don't even know what they are because God hasn't shown us yet. But I know there will be some great things that happen this year as a church body. And I would say this, that I really relish the role God's given me as a part of this body, and to see what God is doing and to be a part of it, and to be amongst the people of First Baptist Church. And the thing I would ask for prayer this morning is for you to personally pray and pray as a church for God to continue to show how that develops and how that progresses. Because I love this being being a huge part of life for me and for my family. So then I'd like to share, too, just a couple of things that I'm thinking about that, I don't know if I guess they are difficulties, but things that strike me anyway. In our first 4 years, roughly or so, I think I could count on one hand the number of times that Mick and Sherry were not in church, that they weren't here. And you might or might not know that Mick's been a part of First Baptist since before this building was even here. He's been a long time part of this body. So to have them be gone so frequently this fall was difficult. To know that they wanted to be here but couldn't be here, to have just physical things get in the way, and I don't like that. It's tough to see that when you have somebody that you depend on, that you see even as parent-type figures in your life. It's hard. It's difficult, and I know it's been difficult for them. So that's one thing that stands out. And then another is Kathy Nicholson has been moderator over these years, and I really admire Kathy's temperament and insight. She's not the loudest person in the room. In fact, you might not even hear her say anything on a given day. But she's full of wisdom. She brings a sense of calm. And she doesn't do things on a whim. Her decisions are well thought and prayed about. So she has recognized the time for change in her life in terms of not being moderator. And I respect that. I don't like it because it makes me nervous her not being there, but I respect it and I understand it. So there's a sense of new there as well. So those are some things that I think about. What are some things happening in your lives? And if I can get Isley, would you guys be willing to take mics again? And if there is no one that shares, that's okay. We'll go to song and prayer, but if there are things that you're thinking about reflecting on in 2019 or looking forward to in 2020 that we could share in prayer today.
So I can share. For those people that know, when you're a business owner, you try to look for an exit strategy other than dying. It's not the ultimate exit strategy it is for all of us, but not for that particular reason. So for probably almost 10 years, I've been looking for, that way out of what I need to do and have been praying a lot about it. And God just is silent. And so I take that to believe that I'm supposed to stay where I am at. Mm-hmm. So here comes the 9-month challenge. And so I wrote that down for my 9-month challenge as to what do I need to do over the next 9 months. Again, probably making it happen. What do I need to do? So, again, God is silent, but I'll tell you what He's taught me. If you know me, I've been collecting toys for almost 30 to 40 years, and I've got toys that range probably from 20 to 80 years old. And so one of the changes in my life, and one of the things you can let go of, because, you try to think, can I let go of that business? Is that what God's trying to teach me? I'm going to let go of those toys, and I'm going to have a toy auction, one of two probably over the next 3 years. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've been doing, Lloyd, is going through toys. If I can't go to Houston, I've been sitting in a chair and going through toys and sorting things, and it is kind of a freeing thing, and it's one way that I can let go. And I think that's what God's been teaching me. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? What's on your heart as 2019 closes?
I love my job. I love being with kids. I would rather be with kids than adults, but our department is changing even more. We're struggling hiring people. I've been working 60 to 70 hours a week and trying to find time for myself and my family. And now one of our supervisors is leaving. The person that does all of our assigning activities is leaving. And I feel like I'm kind of being pushed to go to that position, but I don't want to give up my time with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm struggling.
You have a timeline when that might have to be decided?
Very soon.
Okay.
Very soon.
Okay.
Like next couple of weeks.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else?
There was last year it was an interesting experience for me that changed like my perspective on things, and then when it came to thinking about it the whole time this year, last time I had a furlough, I went, like always, I'm going to go visit my daughter in Argentina, but there was a crisis unfolding on Venezuela's border, but they were having a really cool concert, free for anyone, so Richard Branson's Live Aid concert. Decided to make that part of the trip. And then the next day is when they pushed aid into Venezuela. It got burned. But when you're there and seeing the whole thing unfold, you just can't come back to the U.S. and just forget. Mm-hmm. So the whole time thinking, when it was there trying to help out with food on the crisis unfolding, thousands of Venezuelans just desperate. Mm-hmm. At least it's jungle. So when there's no home or stuff like that, you just got to have food. That's about it, and they'll survive. But real quick, you realize food running out, bunch of people trying to do things, but anyway. Interesting way of just the whole year trying to think how to help. I figured I'll just go back and do mud, which sounds weird, but I'll basically figure instead of cement in a jungle that doesn't grow plants, you want to promote mud, because mud will grow plants. And I'll write a crazy, weird book to try to promote mud, kind of laughable, a whole lot of comedy in it, no doubt. But my simple way of being able to highlight and pinpoint realities of a little bit of anger management when you see stuff like that. You definitely don't love seeing. Anyway, mm-hmm. when you see that, you just can't forget. I'm sure a lot of people could imagine when you see things you just can't forget, can't erase from your mind. Mm-hmm. Those are those situations. But mm-hmm. It is a bright way of looking at 2020, just knowing that there are the solutions, that there are the ways forward, and hopefully weaponry is not one of them.
Amen. Thank you. There's some hope right there. Anyone else?
I would say 2020 is going to bring a empty nest to our house, and new luck at where our life will go. We'll face challenges also with our kids leaving. We have a 14-year-old dachshund who literally every day is a blessing with her, and then I just need guidance from my mother as she is getting older, and I need to figure out a better quality of life for her and hope. So 2020 will be a challenging time, but I do know God is with us, and He's working it all out while I'm worrying about it. So.
Amen. Anyone else?
Well, I, for one, will say I'm glad to see 2019 go. We've had a lot of things in our lives that I know people have had worse, but it's been a difficult year for us. So I'm looking forward to 2020.
Yeah.
2019 was definitely a year that the Lord was trying to teach me patience. My sassy 2-year-old, as cute as she is, can be very pushing. I'm very curious to see where the Lord takes me in 2020, because my hope is that I can be the best mommy for that little girl. So that's my prayer.
sorry about the tears, but I need to learn how to love people that I do not like. And it's very hard and it's very challenging, but I'm working on it and trying to get better with it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
There's a big challenge at my job, and I don't know where it's going to lead me in 2020, but hope it just leads me in the right direction. I agree with Kathy with people that you cannot like, but you need to love. And it's really hard in a lot of situations. At the job working, you more or less are at your job more than you are at home. And I just need prayers and just hope 2020 will show, and God will show me the way to go for this year with my job.
Amen. Thank you. Anyone else? Somebody get to Lloyd there?
I don't know, that's, at my age, you wonder what the next day is going to be. There's a lot of us that have health problems, no issues, no answers, but you have to stop and think that I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring for me or anybody else, but I do have a lot of pressure with my illness that I have and what tomorrow's going to bring. So a lot of you have a promise of what you want to look for the future, and it's a sad thing that I personally feel that I don't know how long I'll be here and when God will call me home. But I do try and keep my faith up and my hopes up. As my youngest son says, Dad, I want you to live another 7 years. So that's my goal. If I can, I'd like to reach 100 years of age. But if I can't, I told him what I'd love to do is just go to sleep and not wake up. So basically speaking, we have to look to what tomorrow's going to bring. We never know whether we're young or old. So we have to live the life we have and enjoy every minute of it.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's so good to hear people of all ages, and to hear that people are still looking to God for advice and direction at every stage of life. So we're going to close by, thank you girls, right after the song, yep. So we're going to close by singing our closing song, and then we'll pray. And as we sing, I know the words will be on the screen, so I'm going to ask you to stand, and if you're willing, if you would join hands with the people next to you, even if you're willing to join hands across the aisle, that would be a good thing.